Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
By decree of this council, Earth is hereby stripped of all military advisory authority, effective immediately. The words carried through the great assembly chamber like a pressure wave, quiet but heavy enough to bend every conversation into silence. The chamber's architecture, spiraling balconies of stone grown from living mineral, pillars threaded with bioluminescent veins, was meant to impress newcomers with its beauty. Today, it felt like the shell of a courtroom, preparing to convict someone already standing at the gallows. High Counselor Varid Serev stood upon the central dais, his translucent skin shimmering with dim golden fractals that pulsed inward toward his core. Among the Aurelians, that dimming meant sorrow. It also meant fear. His long, multi-jointed arms folded with ceremonial precision as he delivered the decree to the lone human standing below him. Counselor O'Neill did not move. He wore the dark, immaculate formal coat of Earth's diplomatic corps, military-cut shoulders, restrained silver insignia. His posture was straight, hands loosely clasped behind him, the stance of a soldier taught to show nothing unless he chose to. The translator field carried no tremor from him, not a flicker of breath, no emotion for the hundreds of alien species to read. Varid's voice softened, though the words remained sharp. Earth has served this council for 141 cycles as High Military Advisor. Your record of strategic guidance is unprecedented, but the council has determined that your species' unconventional doctrines have begun to destabilize predictive models within multiple member states. His inner lights flickered once in a deeper shade, Aurelian for regret. This decision was not made lightly. Whispers rippled among the tiers of delegates. Some murmured relief, others radiated hostility. A few watched with the wariness of creatures studying something they instinctively understood could bite. O'Neill lifted his chin by a fraction, the smallest acknowledgement of the decree. The decision of this council is understood. The chamber waited for anger, protest, a plea to reconsider. Humans were known, wrongly, often, for their volatility. But O'Neill's voice remained level, as if he were confirming the weather, rather than witnessing the removal of Earth's most powerful position beyond its own solar boundaries. He allowed a heartbeat of silence before continuing. Earth will not contest the decree. However, his pause was deliberate, courteous, almost gracious. Given the Council's conclusion regarding the nature of human military reasoning, it is the position of Earth's Commonwealth that our continued presence within this body would be counterproductive to the stability you seek. A low pulse of disapproval rolled through the chamber's acoustic shell. O'Neill met the eyes of the High Counselor with a calm that felt like an unsheathed blade laid gently on a table. Effective this moment, he said. Earth withdraws from the Galactic Council. A sharp hiss of sound rose from the Sildari Dominion delegation. Ambassador Kravax Tylex surged halfway upright, his obsidian jaw crest flaring wide in a predatory display. "Arrogant creature," he snarled, translator smoothing the edge but not the intent. "Did you imagine we would beg you to remain?" O'Neill looked at him. Not long, not challengingly, just enough for acknowledgement. The ambassador's crest faltered by a hair. From the opposite balcony, the Vexori delegate clicked his thorax plates in derision. Representative Varesh's voice came layered in two tones, the Vexori manner of speaking both intention and emotion at once. "We did your species a favor allowing you into this council. Good riddance." Several delegates chittered or murmured agreement. Their body language varied, folded wings of dismissal, rippling scales of irritation, the tightening coils of serpentiform diplomats, signaling contempt. But not all shared their confidence. Envoy Halu Ten, of the Mirikar enclave leaned forward in his fluid suspension cradle, his skin shifting from muted blue to a pale, trembling white. Among the Mirikar, this was the color of feared consequences. This. His voice was soft, barely caught by the translator field. This may not be wise. No one responded. The chamber's attention remained fixed on the human. O'Neill exhaled once, slowly, a practiced gesture of patience. Earth respects the Council's sovereignty. We will vacate our offices, return all classified materials to their originators, and depart your space within 72 hours. Varid Serev's fractals dimmed again, deeper this time. Counselor O'Neill, I regret that it has come to this. O'Neill inclined his head slightly. Regret is understood, High Counselor. There was no bitterness, no accusation. If anything, his tone carried a faint warmth, the kind one offered to someone making a mistake out of fear rather than malice. O'Neill stepped back from the central plinth. The motion was smooth, precise, as though choreographed. His heels struck the polished stone in an unhurried rhythm, measured, dignified. The chamber's acoustics caught each step, turning them into firm echoes that traveled upward across the balconies. He walked with the posture of a man who had not lost anything, only redefined the playing field. The delegates watched him go. Kravax Tylex glared, crest twitching with frustration. Varesh clicked his scorn again, louder this time, as if a louder noise could erase the unease settling in his thorax. Haluten's skin faded to a ghostly silver, the Mirikar color of inevitability, and High Counselor Varid Serev stood unmoving, the golden light inside his translucent form retreating inward like a fading star. O'Neill reached the ceremonial archway. He paused, only for a breath, and offered the chamber a gesture unfamiliar to most species, but unmistakably human, a polite, almost gracious incline of his head. Half bow, half farewell, executed with the elegance of someone who knew exactly what message it carried. Then he stepped through the arch and disappeared down the corridor beyond. The stone doors sealed behind him with a muted resonance. The chamber remained suspended in silence, as if the air itself hesitated to move. In that stillness, the truth settled like dust across ancient stone. Humanity had left the council, calmly, gracefully, without a single threat spoken aloud. And every species present, whether they mocked, dismissed, or feared humans, felt the same quiet realization in their bones. A species that walked away without protest was a species already thinking several moves ahead. Atlas Reach Command loomed over the metallic twilight of the thunderstorm sector, a fortress of steel and resolve suspended above a pale blue world. Its hull bore no decorative crests, no flourishes, only the stark geometrics of human engineering, every plate shaped by purpose. When the shuttle latched onto the docking collar, the station trembled with a subdued resonance, like a giant clearing its throat. Counselor O'Neill stepped through the airlock, greeted by the low hum of disciplined activity. Technicians crossed the gangway at a march-fast pace. Security personnel saluted with crisp precision, and the scent of recycled air carried the faint metallic tang of an old battlefield, though none had reached this station in decades. General Cornelius Weiss was already waiting. He leaned casually against a bulkhead, arms crossed over a chest built like a stone wall. 50 years had carved lines of command into his face, but tempered them with dry amusement. His eyes brightened the moment he saw O'Neill. "Tell me you didn't bow on your way out," Weiss said. "That would have killed them." O'Neill allowed himself the faintest curve of a smile, a slight inclination. Nothing fatal. Weiss shook his head, pushing off from the wall. "You're a menace." They walked side by side down the corridor. Soldiers straightened as they passed, their respect for O'Neill no weaker for the loss of his former seat. Weiss waved them to ease and led O'Neill into the command suite, a compartment lined with projection tables, holomaps, and the ever-present strategic heartbeat of the thunderstorm sector. Weiss keyed the door shut. Privacy hummed into place. "So," the general said, dropping into his chair. "It happened. It did. And Earth is out. Fully." Weiss nodded, and O'Neill could see the calculation behind the reaction. The general was already sliding into the next phase of the plan. No surprise, no shock, just confirmation. "That settles it," Weiss said. "Now we move forward on our terms." For 20 cycles, the galaxy forgot humanity, or convinced itself it had. Earth withdrew from Council politics with a neat finality, neither hostile nor apologetic. Where other species expected dramatic retaliation or desperate alliances, humans simply vanished from the board. They did not answer diplomatic snipes. They did not involve themselves in neighboring quarrels. They did not correct accusations whispered behind closed doors. Instead, the thunderstorm sector settled into its own rhythm. Human colonies grew steadily across new worlds, unremarkable on the surface, but built with meticulous care. Trade convoys moved between star systems under discreet escort. Scientific expeditions launched from Atlas Reach Command to chart ancient anomalies in the Andromeda spiral arm. Mining fleets harvested resources with quiet efficiency. No wars, no interventions, no disruptions. The Council interpreted the silence as compliance. Some members called it humility. Others called it irrelevance. The boldest whispered that stripping humanity of influence had saved galactic stability. 20 cycles of smooth, predictable politics followed. Meetings, negotiations, minor border disputes. The same alien diplomats who once feared human doctrines now spoke of them as outdated curiosities. But in the thunderstorm sector, O'Neill and Weiss continued to watch. They built, fortified, observed. Their silence was not retreat. It was preparation. Across the galaxy, storms can brew unseen for a very long time. The first sign that the quiet years were ending came not as a message, but as a scream. A distress beacon ruptured through the Council's secure channels. A fractured, static-ridden transmission from a Sildari colony on the outer fringe. The signal carried garbled voices, shards of environmental data, and a final, chilling fragment of video. A cityscape collapsing inward, buildings folding like soft metal, entire districts swallowed by an advancing ripple of distortion. Then only silence. 500 million Sildari, gone. Then the chamber doors slammed open during the emergency session, and Ambassador Kravax Tylex stormed inside. His obsidian crest flared at maximum width. The Sildari were not known for losing composure, but today his claws scraped sparks from the floor. "Annihilated!" he roared, voice cracking with something far beyond fury. "Our colony, our people, erased! Where were the Council fleets? Where was your protection?" Delegates recoiled, others whispered in terror. Among the Aurelian continuum, Varid Serev's internal lights constricted so sharply they dimmed to near darkness. Even the Vexori representative momentarily lost the rhythm of his thoracic clicks. Kravax slammed a data slate onto the ceremonial plinth. "See what is left. See what they did." The playback showed the final minute of the colony's life. Structures buckling, the horizon distorting. A wave of impossible force sweeping over fleeing civilians who vanished without so much as a scream. "The swarm is moving," he continued. "Their vessels, organic carapace constructs, are advancing toward the inner dominion. They will not stop. They consume. They grow. And they will tear through us, one species at a time, unless you intervene now." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then Varid Serev lifted his long, translucent hand. His voice remained smooth, ceremonial, unwavering. "Ambassador Tylex, the Council has reviewed the holofeeds. The gravity of the situation is clear. You shall receive assistance." Kravax Tylex stared at him, mandibles tightening. Assistance? High Counselor, this requires more than assistance. It's require war. The council chamber broke into chaos. We must retaliate, at once. Identify the species responsible. Mobilize the Armada. Deploy all major fleets. Murmurs spread across the balconies, but not fear, confidence, arrogance, assurance in their own superiority. The Centauri representative folded his silver-skin arms. We have defeated threats before. The Void Fleets, the Iron Hegemony, the Marauder clans. A Vexori chimed in with layered clicks. The Kralon devoured only unaligned worlds in ages past. They will find no such weakness here. The Aurelian lights pulsed in measured calm. The Council commands fleets from 36 species. The swarm will be opposed by force unmatched in this quadrant. Kravax's crest lifted slightly, a rare Sildari gesture of defiance. Then you must strike with everything, he said. Do not underestimate what destroyed us. The Council's confidence was absolute, and so was his. He stepped back from the plinth, silent as the delegates resumed their war protocols. We will prepare our armada, Varid declared. A combined strike force will intercept the swarm before they reach the core dominion. Our technology, our numbers, and our unity will prevail. Delegates nodded. Generals murmured approval. Weapons manifests began populating the strategic display screens. A coalition fleet, the largest since the Council's founding, was already forming in their minds. Across the chamber, commands began to ripple outward. Mobilization orders, fleet summons, supply chain activations. A dozen species signaled readiness, another 20 pledged ships and elite strike units. The weight of multigalactic pride welded them into a single purpose: war. The Council believed its armada could crush anything. And far from this chamber, in the Thunderstorm sector, humanity remained silent, watching. The Galactic Council Armada set forth like a tide of steel and resolve, 1,000 vessels representing 36 species, each crafted by centuries of warfare, diplomacy, and pride. Engines burned sapphire and emerald through the cold emptiness as the fleet crossed the Sildari border and moved toward the shattered shadow of Tathrun. No songs, no speeches, no ceremonial rites. Only confidence, only the belief that unity made them invincible. In the command carrier Aurelius Prime, High Counselor Varid Serev stood at the projection sphere, his inner fractal lights pulsing with controlled tension. To the Aurelian mind, this fleet was the galaxy's greatest achievement. Technology woven from the best of 100 cultures, weaponry matched only by the legends of lost ages. Around him, representatives of allied species observed the tactical display. Kravax Tylex, his crest still dull from grief, stood rigid as the stars swam by outside the viewport. The Kralon will not resist this force, the Centauri Marshal declared, Silverskin rippling with confidence. They have never faced a united armada. Varish of the Vexori clicked in layered harmony. They are a biological curiosity. Their vessels are grown, not built. Fascinating, but no match for plasma lances and harmonic shields. Kravax did not respond. His jaw crest remained half-folded, the Sildari sign of deep unease, when words offer no certainty. The fleet dropped out of warp near the Tathrun perimeter. Silence greeted them. Where a thriving star system once glowed with commerce and habitation, now there was only scorched rock and drifting debris. The planetary rings, once silver and vibrant, hung crooked, as though twisted by an unseen hand. The remnants of orbital stations floated in jagged arcs, their structure warped as if melted and reshaped. Weapons on standby, the Aurelian Fleetmaster announced, scanning for hostile signatures. A moment passed, then another. Still nothing. The Centauri Marshal narrowed his gaze. A graveyard. The swarm must have left the system. We've lost the element of surprise. Confirmed. No active drives, No comms traffic, an Aurelian analyst reported. Debris field is extensive, but inert. Then we begin planetary sweep, the Marshal ordered. Scans to full depth. Map what they destroyed. As the fleet drifted into orbital position, the main projection sphere pulsed with layered sensor feeds. Thermal fluctuations, a Vexori tech reported. Planetary crust reads unstable. Cracking patterns at unnatural intervals. Another officer leaned over the display. Something's extracting from beneath the equator. Deep tectonic draw. Surface erosion consistent with high-energy mineral harvesting. Extracting? The Centauri said, frowning. There's no mining fleet there. No, but there's activity. The words had just left his mouth when the scanner array spasmed. New contacts, hundreds of them, unfolded from the planet's shadow. They hadn't arrived. They had grown. Their signatures were pulsing, irregular, organic vessels crawling into orbit like insects birthed from the planet itself. They're coming up from the crust, the officer gasped. They've been burrowing, feeding off the planet's layers. Metal, energy, atmosphere, everything. Kravax stepped forward, stunned. They never left. The command deck locked into silence. Then the display lit red. The Kralon opened fire. The first wave broke across the Armada like a silent storm. The enemy ships moved as if swimming through a sea unseen by Council sensors, gliding, sliding, adjusting angles mid-flight with fluid, predatory grace. Their hulls resembled skeletal armor grown from obsidian coral, threaded with veins of molten gold that pulsed like a heartbeat. Kralon vessels approaching, the fleet master said, voice tightening. Advise defensive formations. The ships did not fire conventional weapons. Instead, they opened. Panels along their flanks peeled apart like petals of a metal flower, revealing spirals of biological machinery rotating inward. A pulse of shimmering distortion, barely visible, lashed across space. The first Council cruiser split open without a sound. One moment whole, the next a blossoming cloud of shrapnel and vaporized alloy. Impact! Shields didn't register! What was that? Some kind of spatial... The second wave hit. The distortion pulses passed through shields as if they didn't exist. Aurelian light carriers ruptured into molten fragments. Vexori swarm barges lost half their hull mass in an instant. Centauri assault frigates spun out of formation, trailing vaporized crew. "We need to return fire," someone shouted. But for every Kralon ship destroyed by Council batteries, 3 more appeared on the tactical display, growing from the shadows of the first wave like seedlings, sprouting from fertile ground. Kravax's crest folded completely. "They replicate from the debris," he said hoarsely. "They grow from the matter they consume." It was already too late. The Kralon adapted. Their second volley twisted into something new. The distortion pulses began dragging ships out of formation, warping microgravity around them, crushing hulls into compressed spheres, or stretching them into luminous ribbons before the vacuum swallowed their remains. The Andromedan frigates responded with coherent light batteries, carving streaks of energy that pierced several Kralon vessels clean through. For an instant, victory seemed possible, until the wounded enemy ships peeled themselves apart, their biomass reconfiguring into smaller, agile forms that latched onto the frigates and burrowed through their armor like worms through soil. The screams intercepted on open channels lasted less than a breath. Panic rippled through the Armada. "We need to retreat! Fall back! Fall back!" Emergency warp signatures, systems failing. Multiple losses across all fronts. The Council's unity collapsed into chaos. The Centauri Marshal demanded a coordinated withdrawal, but his commands dissolved into static as his war carrier shattered under a tri-lobed Kralon vessel that enveloped it whole. A Vexori chorus launched a counterattack, diving in formation toward the swarm, and vanished inside a wave of twisting distortion that folded their ships like paper. Aurelian light carriers attempted harmonic shield amplification. The shields held for 3 seconds. Then the Kralon adjusted frequency. matching the harmonics exactly, and the shields shattered inward, tearing the carriers apart. Kravax watched in horror. The battle devolved into slaughter. The Krylon moved with eerie coordination, not through commands, but through instinct encoded in their living vessels. They flowed between wreckage, harvesting what remained, their golden veins glowing brighter with each consumed ship. The Council Armada, once a symbol of interspecies strength, fractured into desperate pockets of resistance. Some managed emergency warp, others fought to the last breath. Most simply vanished, swallowed by the swarm. In the command carrier, Varid Serev stood frozen, inner lights trembling in jagged patterns. "This cannot be," he murmured. "No enemy has ever, no force could, not like this." A violent tremor shook the chamber as the Krylon closed on the flagship. Hull alarms wailed. Emergency protocols cascaded. Kravax drew a ceremonial blade, a useless gesture, but instinct demanded it. "They are breaching our perimeter," an officer reported. "Structural integrity collapsing." Varid's voice finally cracked. "Prepare a sector-wide alert. Transmit, now!" Another officer turned from the comm station. "Last clear channel open, High Counselor." Varid stepped forward, steadied himself, and spoke with a quiet finality. "The swarm is advancing. We are lost." The message burst outward, encoded and scattered to every listening outpost in 3 sectors. "Initiate FTL," Varid commanded. "Get us out, now." The distortion wave struck, just as the emergency jump engaged. The carrier's hull shrieked. The projection sphere shattered behind them, bulkheads fractured. Then the stars twisted and vanished. The flagship escaped. Barely. Behind it, the rest of the Council Armada died in silence, consumed by the Krylon swarm. The first engagement was over. The Council's pride was ash. And in the Thunderstorm sector, far from the carnage, Counselor O'Neill and General Weiss received the fragmented distress calls. Shattered data, lost voices, encrypted final words. The war had begun. Thunderstorm sector usually carried a hum of controlled order. Fleets cycling through patrol routes, colonies broadcasting steady traffic updates, Atlas Reach Command handling 1,000 small tasks with quiet efficiency. But the alarms that sounded now were different. They were low, pulsing tones, the kind reserved for something not hostile, yet not understood. A communications officer raised his head from a console. "General Weiss, we're receiving multiple distress signals from the outer perimeter, identifying signatures. Sildari, civilian class. Several military vessels, but all heavily damaged." Weiss looked up from the tactical display. "How many?" "An entire flotilla, sir." That drew silence across the command deck. Weiss's expression hardened. "Bring Counselor O'Neill to the command suite. Now." He didn't raise his voice. The words carried power by their calmness alone. By the time O'Neill arrived, the Sildari convoy had breached the sector border. The holographic projection showed a dozen broken ships limping into human space. Several trailed debris. One rotated slowly on a dead axis, life support blinking. Rescue drones were already en route. O'Neill approached the display, taking it all in with the same steady composure he had shown in the council chamber weeks ago. "How many survivors?" "Initial estimate, tens of thousands," Weiss answered. "Most in critical condition. Some ships barely holding Atmo." O'Neill nodded once. "Clear emergency docks. Patch them through. Medical teams to stations 12, 15, and 16. Rotate trauma personnel in 30-minute cycles." Orders relayed instantly across Atlas Reach Command. No hesitation. No debate. The Thunderstorm sector responded with the precision of a living machine, one trained through centuries of conflict and discipline. As Sildari ships drifted into docking cradles, human engineers guided them in with soft tractor pulses. Hulls cracked open like wounded shells, revealing survivors in disarray. Elders with folded crests, children clinging to parents, warriors with shattered armor and empty eyes. There was no panic in the human response, only action. A young Sildari medic staggered out of an airlock, mandibles trembling. The human officer guiding her didn't waste a second. "This way, oxygen stabilized, you're safe." Her crest fluttered in disbelief. "You don't ask questions?" "Later," the officer said simply. "You need a chair before you collapse." Farther along the docking ring, a Sildari warrior dropped to his knees, armor cracking as he hit the deck. A human soldier caught him before he fell sideways. "We have you," the soldier said. "Lean on me." The warrior stared, confused by the gentleness. "You. Don't fear we bring the swarm with us?" The soldier's reply was flat, unshaken. "If you did, we'd still save you first." There was no self-righteousness in the words, only conviction. And that alone did something to the Sildari. It broke them open. It let them breathe again. Kravax Tylex arrived last. His command barge had taken direct hits. The hull looked as though something alive had torn at it. His once impeccable armor hung in cracked shards. His crest remained half-folded in the Sildari posture of mourning and shame. He stepped onto the docking platform and found O'Neill already waiting for him. For a long moment, Kravax just stood there, breathing hard, posture held upright by will alone. Then, with visible effort, he straightened enough to perform the Sildari gesture of contrition, touching the tip of his crest with his two claws. "Counselor O'Neill," Kravax said, voice hoarse. "I owe you an apology." O'Neill inclined his head slightly. Not a bow, just acknowledgement. "You owe me nothing," he replied. "But your people, they need care." Kravax closed his eyes as if the words struck harder than anything the Kralon had done. "You treat us with more dignity," he whispered, "than the council did in your final hour as a counselor." Weiss appeared beside O'Neill, arms crossed, posture steady. But his eyes, sharp, analyzing, weighty, studied Kravax with the attention of a commander assessing both a victim and a witness. "This way," Weiss said. "You'll be debriefed in a private suite. You look like you've carried half a war on your back." Kravax managed a bitter rasp that might have been a laugh. "Humans. So direct." "We don't do ceremony," Weiss replied. "We do survival." The private chamber they entered was stark. No ornaments, only a hollow table and 2 reinforced chairs. The hum of the station felt muted here, as though the air itself acknowledged the gravity of the moment. Kravax sank into a seat, claws tightening subtly around the armrest. O'Neill remained standing for a while, watching him with the stillness that unnerved diplomats and comforted soldiers. Then he sat across from him. Weiss stood behind O'Neill, silent but massive, like a mountain in uniform. Kravax drew a slow breath. "I was wrong about you," he said without preamble. "All of us were. Your withdrawal, your calm, we mistook it for weakness, for irrelevance." Weiss snorted softly. "Not the first time someone's misread us." Kravax shook his head. "The council is fracturing. Entire fleets lost. Our dominion, my home, is collapsing under the weight of something we cannot comprehend." O'Neill spoke gently. "Tell us what happened." Kravax clicked his mandibles and lifted his forearm. A Sildari projection band, cracked, scorched, barely functioning, wrapped around his wrist. With a trembling tap of his claw, the device flickered to life. A sphere of blue light expanded above the holotable, projecting fragmented sensor logs, distorted visuals, and tactical data riddled with gaps. Faint static crackled through the room as the last surviving records of the Sildari fleets took shape in the air. "These are the remains of our encounter with the Kralon swarm," Kravax said. "Our last attempt to stand against them. All that is left of 3 Sildari fleets." Weiss leaned forward. "This doesn't look like traditional weaponry." "It isn't," Kravax whispered. "Their ships are living organisms. Their weapons, distortions in space itself. Our shields did nothing. Our armor might as well have been paper." He cycled to another recording. A Sildari battleship fractured under a silent wave of force, its hull folding as though crushed by invisible hands. Kravax lowered his voice. We believed the Council's unity would be enough. We rallied their armada, 36 species, the greatest combined fleet in this quadrant. And? O'Neill asked. Kravax met his eyes, a gesture of raw honesty. The swarm tore it apart in minutes. Weiss watched in silence. No shock, just calculation. The Council lost its head fleets, Kravax continued. Our Dominion can no longer defend itself. Our civilians, they ran. They fled toward the only space remaining untouched. O'Neill frowned slightly. Thunderstorm sector. Kravax nodded. Your space, human space. And now, I must ask for something I never thought I would. He placed his claws flat against the table. Sildari honesty posture. Sanctuary, Kravax said softly. For our survivors. For those still fleeing. The Council is fractured. They cannot protect anyone now. And my people, they will die anywhere else. O'Neill didn't respond immediately. Humans didn't rush their words, not in moments like these. He watched Kravax's lowered crest, his shattered armor, the grief lingering in every motion. Finally he spoke. Your people may stay. Kravax sagged, exhaling a shudder that seemed to release years of tension in a single breath. Weiss cleared his throat. We don't turn away refugees. We never will. But if you came to us, you didn't come only for sanctuary. Kravax nodded, ashamed. You are correct. He reached into a compartment of his broken armor and produced a data core. Small, dense, shimmering with compressed information. This holds everything we know about the swarm, Kravax said. Weapon signatures, biological analysis, tactical behavior, adaptation patterns, resource consumption, reproduction cycles, everything. O'Neill accepted the core and set it onto the holotable. The projections expanded, displaying data at a speed only human eyes tracked without flinching. Kravax watched them scan it with quiet awe. When the Council dismissed you, I believed them. I believed you were unpredictable, unstable, dangerous. But now I see the truth. What truth is that? Weiss asked. That humans are the only ones who look at impossible odds, Kravax whispered, and do not turn away. O'Neill leaned back slightly. You think we can stop the swarm? I think, Kravax said, that if anyone adapts quickly enough to survive them, it is you. And if you choose to fight, he swallowed. I will fight beside you. The room fell into a long silence. O'Neill finally rose. He stepped to the holographic star map projected near the wall. The Kralon expansion vectors glowed in crimson across Andromeda, branching like veins, stretching slowly but relentlessly toward human space. Weiss stood at his side, arms folded, jaw tight. O'Neill spoke quietly, without theatrics. We will study your data. We will analyze their patterns. And we will prepare for whatever comes next. Kravax's crest lifted a fraction, a Sildari sign of renewed hope. O'Neill continued, eyes fixed on the expanding crimson lines. If the swarm reaches this sector, he said, voice level as steel, they will regret it. Thunderstorm sector hummed with silent readiness. The refugees rested. The swarm grew. And humanity began preparing for war.
Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's worth a look. Oh, and one last thing. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here. Or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.